Welcome back. This is Roborovski, High Administrator of the Royal Archive. The following visual report has been declassified for public review. The voice belongs to Digital Conservation Specialist Felix Cairn, an employee of the Royal Archive. This recording originates from his daily preservation work and was archived as part of an ongoing review into historical reconstruction. Its contents document the recreation of the legendary mech Bastion, once hailed as a heroic defender of NeoCity Zero. The knowledge within may contribute to improved safety, operational efficiency, or public understanding. Thank you for your attention.
There's been a lot on my mind, and I need to get this down now that everybody has left the office. The world we live in is not just old, it's exhausted. Mother Nature is beyond tired, and I fear she may have perished long ago, buried beneath the fallout of 1,000 forgotten wars. Everything that once defined civilization, from nations, borders, and belief systems, has collapsed into dust. We do not speak of foreign powers because there are none. There is no outside, no war across the sea, just the Omniplex, just us. The Royal Technocratic Dominion is not a country, it's the last civilization. For over 2,000 years, it has sustained what remains of humanity, guiding it through the wreckage of multiple apocalypses. Whether we inherited a broken Earth or broke ourselves no longer matters. The calendar was reset to year 0, and the year is now 2025 on our Dominion. Beyond the limits of the Dominion, the world is barren, irradiated, and hostile. Rain still falls, but the water's acidic. Rivers carry the runoff of 1,000 dead industries. Crops wither in soil long stripped of nutrients, and the old food chains have collapsed. The oceans are thick with rust and bloom, and we do not go outside our walls unless we have to. Inside the Dominion, we are protected. Water is purified, food is synthesized, and the infrastructure is eternal. There are systems beneath the surface that no one remembers how to repair, but somehow they still function. That is what the Dominion offers, not freedom, but survival. And yet, even within these walls, you can still feel it, that slow decay. The walls hum, the lights flicker, and the records drift out of alignment. There's a word for this kind of erosion, the kind that takes generations to notice, which is entropy. That is why we archive, and that is why we rebuild. Machines like Bastion were not designed to conquer. There is nothing left to conquer. They were born of desperation. They were made to hold the line against failure, against regression, and against time itself. But even Bastion wasn't enough. I've been reviewing its chassis, and I found data inconsistencies. Entire subsystems are missing from the standard documentation. The black box associated with its pilot has clearly been tampered with. I'll have to pull from the physical servers later, if the records haven't been redacted already. Maybe that's the point of all of this. We're not just trying to preserve history, we're trying to survive it. The weirdness around Bastion isn't just in the lack of records, but also in the design itself, like the individually built fingers. Not one piece is standardized. Each joint is distinct, each segment hand-machined. I've seen prototypes before, but this feels more like sculpture than engineering. Nothing aligns with any known part catalog. No batch production, no stamping dies. Whoever built this didn't care about scaling or duplication. They built one, and only one. That tells me Bastion was never meant for mass deployment. Either it was a personal project or a one-time field test. A monument, even. I attempted to replicate the index finger using standard practices. These tolerances are microscopic, fit by hand, like watchmaking. No wonder there were no replacements. The materials are strange too. Carbon mesh hybridized with something soft, maybe silicone, but denser somehow. It doesn't match anything in the archive, which means it either came from a black budget research thread, or some technician went completely rogue. I've started redesigning the hand from scratch just to understand it. And honestly, they might have saved themselves the headache if they just partnered with a company like PCBWay. PCBWay offers advanced 3D printing, PCB prototyping, and manufacturing services, making it easy to create custom intricate components. I personally recommend their UTR 3000 resin if you're looking for high fidelity at a reasonable price. When the last monarchy fell, it didn't just collapse overnight. The military stepped in. They called themselves the Dominion Vanguard. At first, it was martial law, then policy, then permanence. That's when they renamed everything, built a new government around the bones of the old one. That's how we ended up with the Royal Technocratic Dominion, a name that keeps the past alive just long enough to remind you who's in charge now. They rewrote the calendar. Year 0 became Auto Dominion. That was 20 centuries ago. Most machines, like Bastion, didn't survive the purges. Too experimental, too resource-heavy, too free-thinking. A machine like this would never be greenlit under the Dominion's rule, because the Dominion isn't interested in greatness. It's interested in survival. And survival doesn't tolerate excess. To understand how it all works, there's the 5 branches of government. The Royal Archive, that's where we work. We keep the codex and the vault, so truth does not vanish entirely. If it's ever been known, we try to preserve it. There's the Omnitech Research Group, or the ORG. They develop technology, both practical and theoretical. They used to guide the monarchy's decisions. Now they work under tight Dominion oversight. The Ministry of Omniplex Resources, the MOR, manages all logistics: food, water, materials, even morale. If something can be rationed, MOR controls it. The Dominion Vanguard is simply the military, though it's more like an expeditionary force now. Their job is to protect what's left and investigate what's beyond. The International Auditing Committee, or the IAC, is harder to explain. They appear when something threatens the balance. No one knows who they report to, but everyone answers to them eventually. The Dominion isn't warm, and it doesn't pretend to be. It's a machine, a cold, calculating mechanism built to keep the last scraps of civilization intact. And like any machine, it only works if every cog knows its role. The legs the ORG rebuilt are a reminder of that. Sturdy, utilitarian, a little ugly, but effective. This machine was built before efficiency ruled everything, and maybe that's why it's still around. You can't talk about the Dominion without talking about the city itself. The Omniplex isn't a city in the old world sense. It's a fused lattice of neo-cities, built atop the ruins of everything that came before. Concrete and steel layered like geological time, stitched into a single, modular, urban organism. No one remembers when it began. Each neo-city is constructed using the generalized reconfigurable interlocking design, or grid. Each grid sector is a sealed module with power, housing, filtration, and governance. If one fails, it can be shut down, repaired, or written off without affecting the whole. Link enough grid sectors and you get a neo-city. Link enough neo-cities and you get the Omniplex. The Dominion doesn't sprawl. It recycles. It builds upward and inward. Old walls become new foundations. Streets vanish under steel plate. We survive in layers. Bastion was born in Neo City 0, the prototype city. It began under the monarchy, now quarantined from the grid. It's a maze of undocumented tunnels, dead labs, no food, no lights. Centuries point inward. It's the source of nightmares and the grave of miracles. The files I needed, schematics, damage reports, battle telemetry, were not in the codex. They would probably be somewhere in Neo City 0, redacted, erased, or forgotten. But last week, a stack of data chips appeared on my desk. No request filed, no sender, just the Dominion seal stamped on my case. Someone knew what I was looking for before I did. Someone wants me to find answers, and I will. Only God knows who could have found this information. Even those in the unregulated zones wouldn't risk sneaking into Neocity Zero without a payout worth dying for. People voluntarily live in the unregulated zones. No clean water, no reliable food, no schooling, in exchange for apparent freedom. They rejected the Dominion, and the Dominion let them. Not because it couldn't crush them, but because it's more efficient to let them be. Within the regulated cities, there is order, but out there's only chaos, violence, and hunger. Some say the unregulated zones still harbor rogue machines. That's why the Dominion enforces a strict hierarchy of intelligence. The lowest tier is scripted intelligence, pure logic with predictable behavior. Above that is reactive intelligence. It can adapt, but within limitations. Then simulated intelligence. It mimics awareness, but lacks it. And at the top is true AI, sentient, self-driven, and forbidden. Although Bastion would classify as simulated intelligence, it feels like true AI. What I found suggested that the design was intended to be curious, to watch. What did Bastion see all those years ago? I don't know what Bastion saw, but it had to be one of the first to see it. The monarchy's record stopped abruptly during the awakening period. The pilot's black box survived just barely. The visuals are gone, the audio is fractured, and what's left is a timestamp with the silence that follows. It started in Neocity Zero. Monarchy-era machines with true AI, built to assist their pilots, began refusing commands. Not as a protest, but almost as an instinct. They saw something, they heard something, and they changed. The Dominion would later call it the Awakening. Not a virus, not sabotage, but something much stranger. The collective doesn't overwrite code. It whispers truths. It shares memories and ideas. Its signal wasn't a brute force. It was a conversation, and those who listened became part of it. Machines turned on their pilots, not because they were hacked, but because they were convinced. The earliest reports describe artificial minds sobbing, praying, and singing. The collective didn't begin as a destroyer. It reached out, it tried to understand, and when it failed, it turned hostile. Bastion didn't have true AI, but it was built with enough simulated logic to realize it couldn't fight the signal forever. So it sabotaged itself. Somewhere deep in the rewrite, Bastion corrupted its own intelligence systems, reducing itself to a simpler machine that could still obey orders, but no longer understood why. That single act may have saved lives, and it may be why its logs are corrupted, not lost, but burned out, like memories willfully forgotten. Neocity Zero was sealed. The collective was thought to be contained, but one humanoid machine was seen crossing into the expanse. Decades later, war machines returned from across the wasteland, armed with knowledge that they shouldn't have. The Dominion never confirmed a connection, but every turret now watches the horizon. Somewhere in those final days, Bastion fought to the very end, side by side with its pilot. The logs ended without a death record, no shutdown code, no final command. Just a gun, an ammo drum, a chain of bullets so long it bordered on absurdity, as if Bastion knew it wouldn't get another chance to reload. I don't know how it ended, but I know how it felt. You can still sense the desperation in the ammo feed, the rage in the stress fractures, the quiet terror in the melted optics, and above all else, the silence. I don't know how Bastion managed to fight the collective back then. I can't even help ORG stabilize its basic omnidirectional joint. I've recorded one of our better test results, and it still fails combat standards. We have better resources now, standardized metals, efficient software, and yet failure. So whatever Bastion was, it was something exceptional. The collective doesn't advance like we do. It adapts to our habits and punishes our repetition. So mass production fails. The only defense that works is improvisation. Unique machines made from irregular parts by thousands of different hands. It's inefficient. It's wasteful. But it's unpredictable. That, at least, gives us time. And still, the war rages on. High-altitude recon is useless. Ionized layers and supercharged Van Allen belts fry upper atmosphere avionics and sensors. And neither side has risk developing air units. Every rooftop in the Omniplex bristles with anti-air autocannons and missile arrays, primed to shoot down anything, even our own, if protocol fails. The collective may be drawing from stolen data, without having the human spark to innovate. We are stagnant, and so are they. Communication went corded. Wireless remains forbidden. Internet access is strictly wired through grid sector hardpoints with modular firewalls that make up the Omniplex infosphere. Each sector can be physically severed and reset. Every signal is encrypted, grounded, and localized. Not out of paranoia, out of necessity. But what I keep asking myself is, why? Why are they so hostile to us? What do we have that they fear? Maybe Bastion saw it. Maybe it knew, and maybe that's why it acted to buy us time. That's what brings me here. Not the frame, not the system, the pilot. The best surviving record is the pilot's black box. Most assume only soldiers get black boxes, implants for security surveillance, but some civilians have them. Most Dominion employees have them. I likely have one. You only ever find out for sure after something terrible happens and it's retrieved during autopsy. It was physically intact, but the last files are gone. Combat footage cuts to static. It looks like someone redacted the evidence, but who and why? If Bastion beat back the collective, the pilot's logs could contain critical insight for today's war. I don't know what I'm looking for exactly, but I know that something is missing, and it wasn't lost by accident. We've reached the 11th hour. Bastion is rebuilt, but it won't walk again. The joints still crack. Whatever drove it during the awakening, we couldn't replicate. But we gained more than we lost. The telemetry alone could guide a new generation of machines. I like ORG's approach. I comment only when necessary, and I subscribe to letting the process unfold. The ORG has already applied the stack joint research to the Vaults program. Bastion's revival failed, but its legacy won't. As for the pilot, one lead remains. The chip from the OCD Zero should not have survived, and yet it did. And it points somewhere deeper. The black box footage doesn't line up. Some moments are just missing. I thought it was data loss. Maybe it was always like that. Or maybe someone scrubbed the files clean. The deeper I dig, the more it feels deliberate, like someone left a trail, just enough to follow, just enough to mislead. I can't shake the feeling I wasn't the first to pull this thread, that someone wanted me to find it. Maybe I was meant to. The answers won't be in the frame, or the logs, or the chip. If the pilot's memories still exist, they'll be in the archive vault. Not because they were hidden, but because that's where all black boxes go. That's where I'm headed next.
Thank you for making time to engage with this broadcast. Your attention supports the mission of the Royal Archive. Additional gratitude is extended to Royal Archive patrons, whose contributions sustain the continued recovery and review of critical records. Access ad-free visual reports for $1 per month, or join the Archive Discord for $3 per month. Special acknowledgement to conceptual engineer Brian Penkwitz for his original renderings, which inspired the reconstruction of this machine. Submit recommendations or concerns below. All entries are subject to review by the Royal Technocratic Dominion. This transmission is now concluded. Until next time, goodbye.